Now, the Road Freight Association has warned that logistical delays caused by blockades are harming businesses. The association's CEO, Gavin Kelly, was in the meeting with the ministers. He now joins us live. Thank you so much for your time, Gavin. We do appreciate it. Let's just first get into how this meeting went and if there was any kind of solution, because we know that whenever there's an issue with the trucks, there's some kind of meeting. And I'm wondering if we're just putting a Band-Aid over the issue and if any solution came out of this meeting.
Good evening, Heidi, and good evening to all your viewers. Well, one of the things that we agreed upon when we got together today was not to have a Band-Aid solution, or not just to have a couple of resolutions that, as has happened in the past, just hang in the air and there's no actual implementation. So we sat through about 8.5 hours today. We haven't dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, but I can tell South Africa that there is a workable, feasible plan that has been put together. Obviously, here and there are those members who haven't quite agreed, and we need to go back to our constituents and chat to them about it, some of them are saying, but we're going to get there. And if we get this plan in place, we can solve what's happening in the country.
Well, I do hope so. And I know you've written a lengthy letter to the president, and let's get into that. How much is actually being lost because of key routes being locked and blocked, Gavin? What are the economic consequences because of what we are seeing with trucks on the roads?
Well, Heidi, there's always the first short-term losses. So, on the day that trucks are delayed or they're blocked and there's cargo on those trucks that is destroyed or spoiled, it doesn't have to be looted. It can just be in terms of it needing to get to its destination within a certain amount of time. And more importantly, this time round, it wasn't just the N3. There were a whole host of routes that were targeted. And some say it was very good planning in actual fact. So from the Northern Cape to Mpumalanga, from KZN up all the way into Limpopo, there were routes. And over the 4 days, it wasn't just the one day on the N3, this had started sometime before. And over the 4 days, our rough calculations, we'll get the final number, and I suppose by the end of tomorrow or so, we've already lost about 300 million rand. That's including penalties for delays and everything that I've spoken about.
It is rather concerning, and I want us to speak about ships. We do know that some ships are passing our ports because they know what's happening with our trucks. Is this still a concern, and how detrimental is this?
Well, you must remember that even though we like to think we're the only guys who play rugby and eat rooibos, we're part of the greater world, and we're on one of the most important shipping routes or shipping lanes in the world, and there are a number of shipping companies or shipping lines that come past us. They deposit containers here to pick up later, or to take empty containers back to the east if they're coming from the east. And if we continually prove as a country that you can't depend on us, that we can't get either full containers or empty containers back to the ports, back to those importers and exporters, as the case may be, if we cannot secure our logistics chain and ensure that the ships can do what they want to do, they'll go past us. They'll go to the neighboring ports. They'll drop the boxes off there, as we call containers, and then we're going to have to go and fetch them there. So this is really an important thing that we need to get right, so the rest of the world knows if you go and do trade with South Africa, it's efficient, it's secure, and we can move on time every time.
It's very worrying that this isn't extremely urgent to resolve. And I want to ask you about what you think, having been in that meeting, and perhaps I know you're not in a position to divulge too much. We do know that there will be a press briefing tomorrow at 12 o'clock. But what is the biggest sticking point between government and all stakeholders? I need to understand why no consensus has been met. If you were in a meeting for 8 hours today, surely there should be some kind of understanding about how serious the problem is. What is the sticking point, would you say?
Well, I think, Heidi, let's go to the first point, and that is that despite the backgrounds that we might come from, so we have employers, we have those who represent an unemployed grouping in South Africa, we have those who are from government and authority sector, everyone was unanimous that this sort of activity can't continue. So that's important. Whether, of course, that will stick is the other question, but everyone was unanimous, we can't continue with this. What was also unanimous was the identification of what lay at the heart of this. And in our sector, what's been driven here by the ATDF is the fact that foreign individuals are being employed by South African companies, and there are South Africans who are unemployed, and that ripple effect into the economy. And there are a couple of other issues around that in terms of minimum wages, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really what needs to be identified. And the steps that need to be taken to rectify that is where the discussion now rests. It's the little nitty-gritties of who's going to do it by when, and how is it going to play out. That's really where we are. We've now got to sit down and decide, okay, yes, we agree with this or we don't, and that's who's going to be responsible for it. And most importantly, a time frame, a timeline, so that it isn't 10, 12 years later that we're still trying to solve this. I think that's what we need to understand.
Yeah, hopefully it's not 10 to 12 years where we're sitting with this problem. Hopefully some kind of solution can come out of these lengthy meetings. I want us to speak about the fact that the Consumer Goods Council told ENCA this week that trucks are finding it difficult to get to smaller towns and villages on the N3 to deliver goods. Do you think that these areas will start having issues of essential goods being delivered because of what's currently happening?
Well, again, we have to try and work out why trucks are being stopped, or what are the protests about. And you'll recall that in the last couple of years, we've had incidents where what is commonly termed service delivery protests have taken place. There have been a couple of other protests around issues that have got nothing to do with trucking. But the problem is that targeting trucks it's an easy target, it's a large target, and when you burn a truck, there's a huge fire, you get a fair amount of media attention. But if we're not able to sort out some of the basic problems, water supply. So there are a couple of towns in Mpumalanga right now that have had no water for a couple of days. There are protests there. The trucks are not getting in because there's stones and rocks across the roads. So at some stage, if we can't sort out all of these little things, and we can't guarantee secure access to, there will be shortages. At this stage, it hasn't happened, but the continual prevention of trucks getting to where they need to go eventually down the route will have an effect.
And also the conditions that many of these truck drivers are subjected to. I mean, imagine being en route somewhere and then stopped because the road is blocked. I'm sure that these truck drivers deal with a lot of anxiety, thinking, how am I going to go ahead this week because of the possibility of there being any unrest or blockades of very key routes. And that's leading to my next question. Are you concerned that the week ahead could possibly see more a blocking of key routes, or do you think there will be some kind of solution from the meeting that is expected to continue tomorrow?
Well, Heidi, we left the meeting today with the understanding that we need to discuss these things and not create these blockages and have any sort of violent attack. Now, everyone has left. There are those who are not completely happy with where the discussions have gone. And as I've said, hopefully that can be finalized and resolved and clarified tomorrow so that everyone is happy. But this is one of the reasons why we had what we had last week, is because some things are not being resolved. So the frustration level is beginning to build, which one understands. The reality is that if there isn't any clear movement towards those steps that are going to actually make the changes, then we can look forward to this happening again. Hopefully not this week, but again, if there's clear indication that there's going to be no movement, this was a talk shop, which I sincerely believe is not going to be the case. Let me not be proved wrong, please. Then there will be more protests, more upset.
The economic consequences of this is truly dire, so hopefully a solution will be met. Thank you so much for your time and your insights this evening. That was Gavin Kelly, who's the CEO of the Road Freight Association. We do know that there will be a press briefing tomorrow, and we'll definitely bring that to you live.